Okay. Well, hi everybody. Today I'm with Dr. Stacy Jagger, aka Dr. Sassy, and she is a family therapist and coach, and she is the creator of the Mountain Method, as well as the author of the 30-Day Blackout. So, welcome, Stacy.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited you're here. Tell me, Stacy, what's one thing that you would love for the world to know?
You know what? Because of the work that I do, if the world knew that by stepping away from the overuse and misuse of screen time, especially when you have young children at home, there's a misperception that you're losing out on something, but really there's so much to be gained. And especially in the first 5 days, it can be very difficult. But after that, it's almost like you walk through a door, and it reminds me of C.S. Lewis, The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. You know, you walk through this door, and there's this whole world that you can explore with your children in a sense of connection and forgiveness and exploration and creativity in the natural world, and really entering their imagination and that sense of connection that children are experiencing. Now they're very mad at me in the beginning of these digital detoxes that I implement, but when they walk through that door and start to really feel the love and the connection and the sense of belonging that they've been looking for through a screen, um, there's a paradigm shift, and there's a willingness for the whole family to put screens in their proper place. They're not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
But putting the art of screen time has become, an art of how do you do this where it's done with balance and grace, and where it's the dessert of your life, not the main course all day,
Mm-hmm.
and really using it where it's serving you, and you're not the slave of it. If that's the one thing I could share with the world, and then with the framework of the mountain method, which is just simply, a 5 phase process that I designed and started giving to families about 12, 13 years ago, because it's truly what I needed when I was a kid. I was parked in front of a television much of my life, in my formative years. And I think the research is that, I think it's kids today, before they turn 12, will be on screens about 30,000 hours,
Wow.
which is mind blowing.
Yeah.
There's a 10,000 hour rule of what you can master in 10,000 hours. So that's if you want to learn French, or you want to learn how to play the violin or play the piano, or whatever you want to do in 10,000 hours, you can replace that time with something a little bit more productive. It doesn't mean you have to throw the screen out the window. Because
Yeah.
quite honestly, I've worked with the old order Amish, and even many of them are needing to use phones to communicate with their furniture customers. And, they're breaking a few rules in order to communicate in the world that we
Yeah.
live in. But that's probably the one thing that I would want the world to know. There's a way to do this, and in a way that's grace filled and artful, where you're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but you're
Mhm.
not sacrificing the relationships with your children and your
Yeah.
spouse and the people that are important to you. And you're not exchanging that for screen time alone. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's just really timely. And I have so many questions, but I want to ask you first, how did you discover this?
Yeah, so I lived in an 1850s cabin with my husband in my early 20s. And it's a funny story. We had dear friends that lived on a 150-acre farm about an hour south of Nashville, and went out there for a weekend in an old cabin that had no running water, no electricity. And I just fell in love with the place. I fell in love with the simplicity, the quiet. Just it was out in the middle of nowhere on the end of a very long driveway, and just felt like I was going back in time. And at that time in my life, I was just desperate for something. I couldn't figure out exactly what it was. I was raised in a very violent, chaotic, alcoholic home as a child. And by the time I hit my early 20s, my nervous system was shot. And I really had never experienced true regulation in my nervous system. Of course, I didn't have this language back then.
Yeah, yeah.
But I did not know what, the ventral branch of my parasympathetic nervous system was. I didn't know what mindfulness was, but I knew I was searching for something. And the first day that we moved out there, I was sitting on the front porch of the cabin, and I'll never forget this. I looked at my watch. It was 9 o'clock. And I looked up and I was noticing the trees and feeling the wind and the sun on my face and listening to the birds, and just was quiet, and didn't really have much going on in my head at all. And over a course of what felt like a lifetime, because I think I was sort of caught up into the vortex of like a timeless place, which I now know is a state of meditation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But anyways, I looked down at my watch thinking that the day had passed, and it was 9:15. So I started training myself unknowingly of how to be in the present moment. And it really, in many ways, changed my life and perspective, and of the importance of simplicity and being present with yourself. And I would go for walks for miles with my sheepdog, Max, rest his soul. He's passed. And he taught me so much about just being, not doing, but being. And
Yeah,
it was just lessons that I needed to learn. So fast forward, without going into the whole entire story,
yeah.
I'm now being presented with whole families with multiple children that are scrolling on their phones, that have very dysregulated nervous systems. And I intuitively just knew what they needed. They needed a pause, a break. And I originally called it the 30-day turn it off challenge, which sounds very official. But there was a child client that called it a blackout, and he hated me for it. But that name stuck for children. It's just very a visual. A blackout is very much a visual for a child. So that's where I got the 30-day blackout, was from an 8-year-old little boy who was actually stealing his iPads in the night. There's a whole story behind it. But so I started curating a treatment protocol that's both clinical and coaching. It's a protocol that families can go through on their own at home, or therapists or the clients that come to see me in Brentwood, Tennessee, can experience in a clinical setting. But either way, it's a 5-phase process that includes a digital detox, and the families sort of decide what they're willing to do in a 30-day period of time for the purpose of meeting the goals that they want to reach for their own families, which is typically, better communication, how to resolve conflict, and just how to love each other better, really, at the end of the day. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, because both you and I are therapists, we're both play therapists as well. And I think when parents don't come to us for a digital detox, they come because of certain behaviors.
Right.
And I
Right.
think it's so beautiful how you're saying, being inside, because I am taking your mountain method right now. I'm in just completed phase 2, and the goal setting, that because you've got to see what's at top of the mountain,
Yeah.
that the digital detox, you embedded in that as
Yeah.
well. than just,
Yeah.
hey, you should get off your phone or whatever.
It becomes the driving force for getting what you want.
Mhm.
And it's kind of like going gluten free if you don't want your tummy to hurt anymore. Or, whatever we choose to do that requires work and effort, which is why I use the metaphor of a mountain because it's
Yeah.
not easy to climb one, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think families can be pretty motivated. I think that's good by their goals.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
when someone's embarking on this, what's the first step they would take?
Embarking on implementing mountain
Yeah.
method principles at
Yeah,
home.
and especially just understanding, like you were saying, about the overuse and misuse and about the.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. The first step really is just to be honest with yourself.
Mm.
Like for me, I had talked myself into believing that I did not have a screen time problem anymore myself.
Mhm.
Because I don't have many screens. We only have one television in our entire house. But
Mhm.
then when a few years ago, when I looked down at my own screen time and on my own my cell phone, I
Mhm.
was honestly very unaware of how many times I was picking it up. I was unaware of the amount of time I was spending on my phone.
Mhm.
And so I've had to really get honest with myself about that, and to get congruent of the principles that I'm preaching every day.
Mhm.
So I think the first step is just without any shame, without any guilt, because we don't need any more of that.
Mhm.
Just getting honest with yourself, like
Mhm.
telling
Mhm.
yourself the truth is probably the best first step.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that takes a lot of courage, and I think you're
Yeah.
right. I think you're right. I think you call it base camp. It's like, let's figure out where we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so good. Yeah. And so what's a common obstacle that people face?
You know, gosh, that's uh so many challenges in life. It could be divorce, it could be, all of your children have iPhones now. How do I reverse the clock?
Mhm.
Maybe you have children that they're all in their rooms watching TV and on their Chromebooks from school, and you can't figure out where to begin.
Mhm.
Maybe the obstacle is you're just not on the same page with your life partner. Um, I think we all have our own mountain to climb.
Mhm.
So, it's really what is the challenge for you? What is that obstacle for you? And we're all different. But
Mhm.
some of the commonalities are divorce, two home families,
Right.
um, is pretty common,
Mhm.
and isolation, depression, anxiety,
Mhm. Mhm.
and then in more severe cases, it's sexual abuse and suicidality and the things that we don't talk about as much in a general, you know, um, populate. It's more of a clinical conversation, but
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
so
Wow.
yeah, I mean, there's just so many challenges to face, but I
Mhm.
I think being honest is the first step, and asking for help. And there's help
Yeah.
available, truly.
Yeah. Yes, I
Yeah.
think you're right. Yeah, like professionals and then people with modalities like what you're presenting with the mountain method, and then the
Mhm.
group aspect of being
Yeah.
together in the mountain method and
Yeah.
hearing other parents'
Yeah.
experiences. I think one of the things that I love in working in the mountain method with you is something that you call the heart space and the
Mhm.
emphasis on that like I think with obstacles, that's like a great place to recharge.
Yeah, our dear friend and colleague Lisa Dion, um, of the Synergetic Play Therapy Institute, and her podcast, Lessons from the Playroom,
Mhm.
she has been a mentor of mine for years now. And teaching me the autonomic nervous system, how to listen to my own body, that it is a feedback system. And if we simply listen to it, we can find our heart space. And, there's like an internal discipline to it that I have had to really hone in on. And it's not an easy thing to learn, but wow, it's very profound once you start to really digest the teachings that she's been teaching for years now. And God bless her. I mean, she's just been a leader in her field and our field, and just continues to grow and evolve. But the heart space is where it's where it's at.
Yeah.
It's learning to listen to the ventral branch of your parasympathetic nervous
Mhm.
system, where your true essence lies, that
Mhm.
curious, compassionate, creative, little kid in all of us,
Yeah.
and you can ignore it, you can push it aside, but it's right there waiting on you. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think, what do you think about creativity as kind of a doorway to that?
Yeah, I think all children are artists, which means
Mhm.
we're all artists. We just
Yeah.
get older and sometimes forget that
Yeah.
creative part. And what I
Mhm.
love about painting and music and dance
Yeah.
and any form of creativity is it forces you to be in the right here, right now. It's
Mhm.
it's not about what happened a day ago or a year ago. We're not thinking about what's going to happen next week.
Mhm.
It really trains you to be mindfully in the present moment. Um and it's where the joy lies, and the abundance of the right here is.
Mhm.
And it's a mitigator for trauma symptoms, truly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been working on a project here in Nashville, where we are creating a dance
Mhm.
studio for underprivileged, traumatized kids,
Yeah.
and just allowing. And there's also a counseling program that we're starting there, and just educating the public on how the creative arts are mitigators for trauma symptoms,
Yeah.
especially for children,
Yeah.
is so important.
Yeah.
And sometimes more effective than counseling. So
Mhm. Mhm.
truly,
I love
yeah,
it. Yes,
yeah.
so good. So, last question, how do I know if I'm doing it right?
Oh, I don't know that any of us are doing it right. I don't know that it's about that. I think it's more about life is full of trial and error,
Mhm.
and it's not really about doing it right. It's more
Mhm.
about learning to connect to yourself and loving all the parts of you,
Mhm.
and which means it's learning to love all the parts of your children and your
Mhm.
spouse and your
Mhm.
parents and your neighbors,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is you know right now everybody's talking about the let them theory, and there's a
Mhm.
lot of truth to what she's preaching. When
Mhm.
you let them and when you let yourself,
Mm.
there's just a surrender
Yeah.
to just what is,
Yeah.
and
I
letting
think
it just be what it's supposed
mm,
to be.
yeah.
What I
I
mean?
think it's such a balance just as a family or as a clinician, just between goal setting and integrating. Just let it be and then
Mhm.
focus on the goal and then let it be.
Right.
Almost like a
Totally.
wave.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well
Yeah.
said. Well
Yeah.
said. Yeah.
I am I'm so grateful for your method, and I love just that you're talking about just the that special doorway in the 5 days. I think that would be something that I'm looking forward to, because I'm also doing the digital detox with you with my
Yeah.
family. I'm looking forward to, yeah, how will that feel? And that, like you're saying, it's unique. We're setting a unique parameter, we're setting unique goals as a family.
Yeah.
So to get into that,
It's jarring. It's
is that
perturbing the system,
yeah, yeah.
so I'm not really winning a popularity contest in the
No,
beginning for doing that,
but it's
but
so
you end
magical.
up rearranging the
Mm,
furniture in a different way that's more
yeah,
sustainable. So it's a
yes.
loving thing to
Yes.
do some sort of digital detox with your family,
Yeah.
because you just sometimes we need to rearrange the furniture,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
kind of the whole
Mhm.
point.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it's really beautiful. Well, thank you for your inspiration with the mountain method. Thank you for your time today. And I'm going to include all your contact info in the description so that people can find you and can find more resources and especially your mountain method and anything. So,
Thank you for having me today.
yeah, this is great. Thanks.
You're so easy to